Hi, Matthew Superstars. Guess what? It's a new year, and Mrs. R is still reading The Mouse and the Motorcycle to you, you guys. Happy 2021. I cannot believe we're actually saying 2021. Doesn't it seem weird? Oh my gosh. Well, let's find out what has been happening with Ralph and the motorcycle, shall we? When we last left Ralph, he was talking to the boy in room 215. Do you remember the boy that had the tiny toy motorcycle? The boy ignored the mouse's request. "How would you like to ride my motorcycle?" he asked. Ralph's heart skipped a beat, like a motor missing on one cylinder. The mouse-sized motorcycle really would run after all. And there was one thing certain. Since the motorcycle really would run, the boy could not expect him to ride around the bottom of a wastebasket. Sure! Ralph tried to sound calm. The important thing was to get out of the prison. He braced himself, dreading the touch of the boy's hand on his fur. To Ralph's surprise, the boy did not reach in and grab him. Instead, he slowly and gently tipped the wastebasket on its side, permitting Ralph to walk to freedom with pride and dignity. "Thanks," said Ralph, genuinely grateful for the consideration. "I believe you're okay." "Sure, I'm okay," said the boy, setting his motorcycle down beside Ralph. "Did you think I wasn't?" "Yeah, never can tell." Ralph put his paw on the handlebar of the motorcycle. "It's a real beauty, even with a bent handlebar. I'm sure sorry about that." "Forget it," said the boy reassuringly. "It won't hurt much. The motorcycle will still run." Ralph threw his leg over the motorcycle and settled himself comfortably in the seat. Perfect. Just perfect. The boy was obviously delighted that his motorcycle was just right for a mouse. Ralph could not have agreed more heartily. It was perfect, except for one thing. He did not know how to start it. "Well, go on," said the boy. "Ride it." Ralph was ashamed to confess his ignorance. "I don't know how to start it," he admitted. "It's the first motorcycle I've ever had a chance to ride." "You have to make the noise," the boy explained matter-of-factly. "The cars don't go unless you make a noise." The answer was so obvious, Ralph was disgusted with himself for not knowing without asking. He grasped the hand grips and, fearful lest his noise be too squeaky, managed a Sure enough, the motorcycle moved. It really and truly moved across the threadbare carpet. Ralph was so excited that he promptly forgot to make the noise. The motorcycle stopped. Ralph started it again. This time, he remembered to keep on making the noise. He sped off into a square of moonlight on the carpet and found a good threadbare spot without any bumps. "Look out for your tail," said the boy. "Don't let it get caught in the spokes." "Thanks for reminding me," said Ralph, causing the motorcycle to stop. He started again and steered with one paw while he reached back with the other, caught up his tail, and held the tip safely against the handlebar. It was a glorious sensation. Speeding around on the carpet freely and noisily, and most of all, fast. Ralph discovered that if he made the noise fast, the motorcycle speeded up. If he slowed down the motorcycle slowed down. He promptly speeded up and raced around the rectangle of moonlight, where he made another discovery. When he ran out of breath, the momentum of the motorcycle carried him on until he could take another breath. "Gee, you're lucky," whispered the boy. In order to answer, Ralph had to stop. "I am?" It never occurred to him that a mouse could be luckier than a boy. "You sure are," the boy spoke with feeling. "My mother would never let me ride a motorcycle. She would say I might break my leg or something silly like that." "Well, if you want to come right down to it," said Ralph, "I don't suppose my mother would be exactly crazy about the idea." He began to have an uneasy feeling that he really should be getting back to the mouse hole. "Anyway," said the boy gloomily, "it'll be years and years before I'm old enough to ride a motorcycle, and then when I'm old enough, my mother won't let me." Ralph really felt sorry for the boy, hampered as he was by his youth and his mother. "Go on, ride it some more," said the boy. "I like to watch." Ralph started the motorcycle again and rode around in the moonlight once more, faster and faster, until he was dizzy from circling, dizzy with excitement, dizzy with the joy of speed. Never mind the danger. Never mind what his mother thought. This was living. This was what he wanted to do. On and on and on. "Lucky," whispered the boy with envy in his voice. Ralph did not answer. He did not want to stop. Here's a picture of Ralph zooming, you guys. I mean, he's such a little mouse, but that motorcycle fits him perfectly. Chapter 5, Adventure in the Night. When Ralph had mastered riding the motorcycle on the threadbare carpet, he went bumping over the roses on the less worn parts under the dresser and the bedside table. That was fun, too. "Hey," whispered the boy, "come on out where I can see you." Ralph shot out into the moonlight, where he stopped, sitting jauntily on the motorcycle with one foot resting on the floor. "Say," he said, "how about letting me take her out in the hall? Just for a little spin to see how fast she'll go." "Promise you'll give it back?" asked Keith. "Scout's honor," answered Ralph, who had picked up many of the expressions from children who had stayed in room 215. "Okay, I'll tell you what," said Keith. "You can use it at night, and I'll use it in the daytime. I'll leave the door open an inch so you can get in. That way you can ride it up and down the hall at night." "Can I really?" This was more than Ralph had hoped for. "Where do you want me to park it when I come in?" he asked. "Someplace where the maid won't step on it," answered the boy. "That's easy. Under the bed. She practically never cleans under the bed." "Yes, I know," agreed Keith. "Look, there's a lot of dust mice back there." "Please?" Ralph was pained. "Oh, sorry," said the boy. "That's what my mother calls bunches of dusty fluff under the bed." "My mother doesn't," said Ralph. "Now, how about opening the door?" The boy put his hand on the doorknob. "You won't let anything happen to my motorcycle, will you?" he asked. "You know I wouldn't let anything happen to a beauty like this," said Ralph. "See that you don't, and don't stay out too late." The boy opened the door and permitted Ralph to putt out into the dim light of the hall. Ralph had a scary feeling. He was on the threshold of adventure. There were no beds or chairs for him to dart on in case of danger. The floor creaked. Someone was snoring in room 214 across the hall. Outside, in the pines, an owl hooted, sending prickles up Ralph's spine. Ralph controlled the trembling of his paws while he hesitated outside the door to consider the possibilities of the hall, which was carpeted down the center, leaving two smooth highways of bare floor on either side along the baseboards. It did not take Ralph long to decide what to do. He picked up his tail, took a deep breath, bent low over the handlebars, flattened his ears, and sped down the straightaway as fast as the motorcycle would go. He could feel his whiskers swept back by the force of the speed. It was glorious. Ralph had never ventured so far from home before. The old wooden hotel, cooling in the night air, snapped and creaked, but Ralph was brave. He was riding a motorcycle. He passed room 213, ran out of breath, let momentum carry him past another noisy snorer in room 211, on down the hall to the elevator, the mysterious elevator that carried people to that wonderful place Ralph had heard so much about, the ground floor. When Ralph came to the stairs, he stopped to look down, knowing it was impossible to ride a motorcycle downstairs, and at the same time wishing he could see for himself the wonders that lay below. He sniffed the air, and it seemed to him that he could smell the strange foods he had heard about: cinnamon buns with sticky frosting, turkey stuffing, and pancakes with maple syrup. A ray of moonlight from a window glinted on the glassy eye of a mounted deer's head over the stair landing and startled Ralph, sending him off down the hall, past the broom closet and the linen room, to the end of the hall, where he executed a sharp turn and started back. Exhilarated by speed, Ralph raced up and down. Once, when he heard some people getting out of the elevator, he had to duck behind the curtain of the window at the end of the hall. Toward midnight, he passed his Aunt Sissy scurrying along the baseboard. He waved and nearly lost control of the motorcycle. Aunt Sissy stopped to stare while Ralph rode on, feeling pleased with himself, and at the same time sorry for Aunt Sissy, poor, frightened thing with only her feet to carry her from one crumb to the next. Up and down the hall raced Ralph until, after an especially noisy burst of speed outside room 211, he was startled to hear a dog bark inside the room. Uh-oh, you guys. Now, it was Ralph's turn to be frightened. Uh-oh, he thought, I'd better be careful. If there was one thing Ralph disliked, it was people who traveled with dogs. Dogs always sniffed around where they had no business sniffing. Once a dog had even barked into the mouse hole in room 215. It was days before Ralph's mother got over that. Ralph heard someone moving around inside room 211. Looking back over his shoulder, he saw the door open and a tousled man in a bathrobe and slippers appeared, carrying a little terrier. The man looked cross and sleepy as he started down the hall toward the elevator with the dog. He was walking straight towards Ralph. Realizing he was taking a chance, Ralph speeded up his motorcycle. If he turned and headed back to room 215, he would have to pass the man. It was better to continue toward the elevator and hope he could find a place to hide. He raced on down the hall. The wild barks of the little terrier told Ralph that he had been seen by the dog, if not by the man. "Shut up," muttered the man to his dog. "I'm going to walk you. You don't have to wake up the whole hotel." Ralph reached the elevator, where he drove around behind the ashtray on a stand beside the door. He stopped and waited, tense and frightened. Outside, an owl hooted. He was silent and hooted again. A sudden breeze rattled windows and banged a door. Ralph's teeth began to chatter. The dog whimpered, but the man walked straight past Ralph, pushed a button, and in a moment stepped into the elevator. "Phew," thought Ralph, when the elevator door had closed on the sleepy man and his noisy dog. Maybe he'd better lie low for a while. In a few minutes, the elevator returned to the second floor. As the man stepped out, the little dog looked over his shoulder and spied Ralph parked behind the ashtray stand. Because the dog was a captive and he was free, Ralph could not resist sticking out his tongue and waggling his paws in his ears, a gesture he had learned from the children in room 215, and one he knew was sure to arouse anger. "Let me at him," barked the little terrier. "Cut it out," grumbled the man, fumbling for the doorknob of room 211, while Ralph, a daredevil now, rode in a giddy circle around the ashtray stand. He had a feeling of cockiness he had never known before. Who said mice were timid? Ha! Here's a picture of the grumpy man and his little terrier. You can see the terrier spotted the mouse. When the morning song of birds in the pines grew louder and the snores of the guests and dawn slipped through the window at the end of the hall, Ralph knew it was time to return to room 215. There he was shocked to discover the door shut. Only then did he recall the draft in the night and the slam of a door. He got off his motorcycle and pounded on the door with his fist, but what sleeping boy could hear a mouse beating on the door? Ralph knew from experience that he could flatten himself and crawl under the door of room 215. But there was no way he could get the motorcycle through the crack, not even by laying on its side and pushing it. The handlebars were too wide. Ralph dismounted from the motorcycle, sat down, and leaned back against the baseboard, prepared to guard the motorcycle until Keith awoke and discovered the door blown shut. He was tired after a night of such great excitement and full of dreams. Now that he had seen the hall, he could no longer be satisfied with room 215. It was not enough. He longed to see the rest of the world, the dining room and the kitchen and the storeroom and the garbage cans out back. He wanted to see the game room where he had been told grown-up people played games with cards and balls and paddles. He wanted to go outdoors and brave the owls to hunt for seeds. Ralph, a growing mouse who needs his rest, dozed off against the baseboard beside the motorcycle. After the experiences of this night, he would never be the same mouse again. And I think I'm going to stop right there. Show you guys a picture of Ralph trying to get into the door. What do you guys think? Do you think that the maid or maybe another guest is going to discover a sleeping mouse with a motorcycle against a baseboard? I don't know. Mrs. R would freak out if she saw that, let me tell you. Are you guys enjoying the story so far? I sure hope so. I'll see you next week, superstars, with another chapter from this book. In the meantime, have a good and happy and very safe week. Bye.